Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Running with Wolves. I am so excited because today I have the incredible Gabs here with me. Welcome, Gabs.
Hello.
Hey, so excited for you to be here.
Thanks for
So
having me.
just a little bit about Gabs. She obviously went from being a corporate employee to a solopreneur to a CEO of a super thriving online business management agency. So she's definitely had quite the journey and learned a lot of things along the way. And for those of you that don't know, I actually work with Gabs and her team. They're absolutely incredible. So I am super excited to have you here and just pick your brain a little.
It'll be fun to talk in this lens.
I know, it's awesome. Okay, tell me a little bit more. I know obviously starting a business of your own, especially when you were
Mhm.
pretty young,
Mhm.
is really, really scary. Talk to me a little bit about just kind of what made you want to leave the corporate world, start your own business, all of those things.
Honestly, I had no reason to leave corporate, to be honest. Like, I was 18, still in college. I had benefits, good salary, everything like that. But what it came down to for me was who I worked for. I didn't enjoy who I worked for at the time. I loved what I was doing, but I didn't like management and I didn't like the owner
Hmm.
themselves. And so I couldn't stay. Like, as much as the benefits were amazing, and it literally was a perfect position for me. I would just like it just that was the main reason I left. It wasn't the actual job itself.
Hmm.
So that's why I think, fast forward to now, that is why I think culture at a job is just so important. So that's truly why I left corporate, was because of the work environment and the management. And I think that's why it's so important to me now to make sure that I don't have that at my agency.
Yeah, I know. I even saw one of your Instagram stories the other day, and you were like, one of the things I'm really, really proud about in terms of AHA is like just our culture in general.
Yeah,
And I have to say,
100%.
you guys do such a great job at that. So
Thank
I want to
you.
come back to that in a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah.
I love that about you guys, obviously.
Thank you.
So going back to just kind of the start of your journey, talk to me a
Mhm.
little bit about how it was for starting your business. How did you handle all of that as a solopreneur,
Yeah.
especially coming from the corporate world? Talk to me about what that was like.
Yeah, so I didn't love who I worked for. So I was like, well, I love what I do, so why not just do it myself? And I don't have
Yeah.
anyone in the family who's an entrepreneur or anything like that. So I very much like wasn't sure what I was even walking into.
Mhm.
And so I just figured, if I can apply the skill sets that I've learned from doing what I'm doing, but also the skill sets that I was learning at the time through my personal brand of becoming an influencer on Instagram, I was like, why not just apply some of the same principles and just give it a try? And so that's literally what I did. I didn't really have a plan or any sort of guidance as to what I was going to do. I
Mhm.
just kind of did it. And thankfully it did work out. But truly, it was just one of those things, like, especially at the time, back in what was it, like 2013, 2014, it was like social media was becoming more of a thing where you could monetize it. So I was like, why not try the virtual assisting, the social media management for, the network that I had in the fitness industry. And so I was just like,
Mhm.
I'll just give it a try. And so I just kind of told people like, hey, I'm starting this own thing on the side. Curious if ever you need anybody. And thankfully, at the time, like I said, social media was just kind of becoming a marketing tool. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was a few people who took the chance on me, and some of them are still with us today, which is so cool. But that's literally how I just kind of started. There's obviously a lot of fear around like, what is this? What's going to happen out of this? My family also was very much like, what are you doing leaving a stable job, especially like still being
Yeah.
in college and being so young, and they really thought it was just going to be like a hobby, like a side thing. And then it became what it is today, which is so incredible. And it's just like, it's crazy to think that if you didn't just take that risk, like where would I have been today? So that's really where
Mhm.
it all kind of stemmed from. And then I was a solopreneur for about 7 years until we became what we are today.
What do you feel like was the mindset shift you had to make? Because I think I talk to a lot of people who are business owners who
Mhm.
really struggle because they don't have anyone in their family who is an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. I was very
Yeah.
fortunate where like I watched my dad for 20 years build a
Mhm.
financial management business and I watched what he, struggled with and that was very much encouraged. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that don't have that. So I know you mentioned that like you didn't have that. What was the mindset shift you had to make to feel like number one you were making the right choice but also like not really care about what your family said even though you really do value their opinions?
I think I've always just been like, I don't care what anyone says. So
Yeah.
I kind of just did it anyways, even though the family was not like super excited about it. So I'm just very
Yeah.
much like that person that I'm like, you're going to tell me no, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Hmm.
But also it was just a different sense of like responsibility to have that, like all your eggs are in your own basket and it's very much up to you. Right. And I
Hmm.
think that motivated me in itself to just show that like I could do it. And I think too, also, that corporate company I was working for, like very much was like, what is she doing? And so I
Yeah.
think that was another thing. And then I think in general, it was just a time where a lot of things were so like not common to do in general. So it's just kind of like, you can't lose if you just don't, if you just try. So
Hmm.
I think for me, it was really just like, if you really want to create something that you didn't have at this corporate job, it's up to you to create that. And so, yeah, I think it was just, I'm trying to think of like the exact things that I would tell myself. But honestly, I think I was just like, I'm young. I don't have a lot of responsibilities then. I didn't have a lot of bills. I
Yeah.
didn't have, all this stuff. So I was like, this is the best time for me to take this risk is right now while I don't have a lot to lose essentially. I mean, if worst comes to
Hmm.
worst, I had my diploma. I'm like, I could go work in HR if I wanted to. So I think
Yeah.
truly, now that I kind of like talk it out loud, like that was my mindset was like, this is the perfect time to just try. If it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. If it goes amazing, it goes amazing.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like every time I talk to a different entrepreneur who's been super successful,
Yeah.
they have that mindset of like, well, I mean, it is what it is. And if I fail, like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can go back to like sales or marketing, or I could just get a
exactly.
job. But
Yeah.
now is the opportunity to really take this risk and to make that jump. But I think so many people
Yeah.
hold themselves back by staying comfortable based on other people's opinions or just any of those
Right.
things. So I love that you just took the leap, and obviously it's paid off big time. So
Yeah. No, I think that's the biggest thing is there's always a fallback. As much as you might not love that fallback, there will be a backup plan. You'll figure
hmm.
it out. Like we
Hmm.
just do as humans. We always just figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite sayings is like everything is figure outable. That's something that I just
Yeah.
always say to myself, my team, clients, like
Yeah.
everything is figure outable. Like you figured it out before. Look at the evidence.
Yeah.
Like there's
No,
been so many
exactly.
things in life that you haven't like
Hmm.
known were coming your way that you have figured out, and you'll
Yeah,
continue to be able to do that. So I love
exactly.
that. So going back to just kind of your journey in general, you were a solopreneur for 7 years, which I think is
Hmm.
a technically in the online space. That's a long time to be a
I know. I feel like a bit of
solopreneur.
a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a dinosaur. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what I love about you is I feel like, to me at least, the most successful business owners are those that have like worn every hat and done it
Hmm.
well, so that when you
Hmm.
do bring on a team, because I even wanted to ask you if you feel like people bring on teams too quickly, but and just your experience with teams in general, I think that you
Hmm.
have been able to lead your team so well at this point, probably because of those years. So tell
Hmm.
me a little bit about like what went into your decision to turn things into like a team to scale the agency. Talk to me about like if you felt like it was the right time or just what you went through during that time.
Yeah, so for me, it was just tired of working 12 to 15 hours. I mean, to say I don't work those kind of hours anymore would be a lie, but it's just
Yeah.
different, like
Yeah.
being the owner of a company with a team and just like at a bigger scale and working those long hours is a different thing than working when you're a freelancer, like on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I was just like, I was kind of tapped out on my income. I was tapped out on like these long hours and it is lonely. Like entrepreneurship in general is lonely, but also just working by
Mm-hmm.
yourself is lonely.
Yeah.
And so at that time, it was also COVID. So COVID was definitely taking things off in the online space. So I was like, okay, like I'm really busy, but I'm also just like, I'm dying. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always played around with the idea of even having like one or like two team members to just like help a little bit. I just had that fear of like letting people in. Like I really didn't want to put my company in the hands of other people for so long. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I think I did what I did for so long. And then finally I said, same thing. Like if you don't give it a try, you won't ever know if it was the best thing that you could have ever done or the worst thing that you could have ever done. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, given that we were just really taking off in the space at the time, I was like, this is a perfect time to hire. And so
Yeah.
I hired my first employee, which was actually my brother, in December of 2020.
Yeah.
And that was a huge like weight lifted off my shoulders of having him be able to like help me with the video editing. And I realized just the sense of like, just relief that I had and just that little bit of assistance. And then, just
Mm-hmm.
as I got more comfortable of like teaching others how I wanted something done or what the expectations were, That's when we added more to the team. And quickly, within the first year, we scaled to a team of, I want to say, 6 or so.
Wow.
So, fairly quick for sure,
Hmm.
but we have maintained some of the same team members since day one, which is amazing. But yeah, I think it was very much just that shift in, like, I wanted to do more, I wanted to serve more people. And I just knew that there was a greater potential, especially, like I said, at the time, it being COVID and everyone was going online. So it
Hmm.
was a perfect opportunity for me to just try. Now, I will say the biggest thing that I wasn't ready for when it came to building a team, especially the kind of team I have. So I'm very much like, everyone's exclusive to the agency. So it's not like hiring freelancers who are going to work with other people. Like, it's very much
Hmm.
everyone's basically in house. So that was a different sort of responsibility that I wasn't really prepared for. I wasn't really prepared for the leadership. I wasn't prepared for building a team culture with that many different individuals, different dynamics.
Hmm.
And then also just like continuously sharing the vision of the whole company as a whole, but then also trusting that others are going to contribute to that and maybe even better than I could on my own. And so I think the biggest obstacle that I've had in going from solopreneur to a team is, one, there's a lot more responsibility. Like, you no longer are
Hmm.
just responsible for yourself, you are responsible for everyone's livelihood. Like, that is
Yeah.
a huge one, especially when you incorporate family like I have. Like, that was the risk I very much
Yep.
took. Like, that is a lot of weight to hold on my shoulders now.
Hmm.
I love it. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. It's a true honor, but it is a lot more than I ever thought I would do.
Hmm.
Number two, I think it's always keeping everyone happy to be here and keeping everyone happy just in general. Really learning who people are on your team is a really big thing. That's not just, let me get to know you. It's like really getting deeper on like their love languages and like,
Hmm.
what's their best way of getting, like learning and everything like that. Like, there's a lot to having a strong team like I do. So I think that's like another thing. And then just like letting go. Letting go is probably the hardest thing for a lot of CEOs to do in general, whether you
Hmm.
have an in-house team, whether you delegate it out to a, an agency or anything like that. Like, letting go is probably the hardest one, because you're instantly like, I can do this all, and it's like,
Hmm.
how am I going to know that someone's going to do it better or the same? And that's the thing, is that people are either going to have to learn how to do it the way that you expect them, or they will do it better than you. And you have to be okay with that. And so I think there's so many layers to building a team that people don't really talk about. And
Oh
especially
yeah.
the mindset that we need to have as CEOs. Like, we have to be very open but also very stern on like, this is what we want as well for the company and for the entire team
Hmm.
as well and for our clients. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics when it comes to having a team.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I think it's been a lot of mindset work for myself, and it's been a lot of leadership work for me too, on how to communicate better and how to understand better. And but also not forgetting that it is also your company at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's really interesting because the dynamic that you have with your team, like obviously speaking as somebody who's scaled a team as well and has had to learn a
Mhm.
lot of leadership
Yeah.
lessons in the last couple of years. I think the biggest thing that I see with people who have teams is that they sway to one of two extremes. It's like they're either the dictator and they're way
Mm.
too stern and they
Yeah.
don't allow anybody else's thoughts or processes or things like that to outweigh theirs because they think that they
Yeah.
know best, or they sway to kind of trying to be like the friend and the companion too much to the point
Mhm.
where they kind of get walked all over and
Yeah.
it's like a bit of a mutiny. So I'm curious to know
Yeah.
from you really how you kind of strike that balance, because you talk about with your team like finding their love language, but also your
Mhm.
team performs so well, like they're such a
Yeah.
well-oiled machine, so you guys do strike that balance really well. So what's been kind of
Yeah.
your process in finding that?
Well, I think number one, like my thing that always has stayed in my head is like, people don't leave jobs. I mean, that's like me. I didn't leave the job. I left the people. And so that's something
Mm.
that's really strong in my head. And I think that's why I've put in so much work to understand what is that balance. And I think the work that we've done in order to get our team to where we are, like, we are very close personally, but we also know when it's like professional time.
Hmm.
I think it's allowing that space to get to know them personally, but also professionally, naturally. But I think that personal element is very important. I always say I'll never be a company that's going to have more than 15 employees, because I want to keep that intimacy that I have with the team that I have. Like, I want to be able to know their kids, I want to know their pets, I want to know what they're doing on the weekend. Like, I
Hmm.
love having that kind of culture. And I feel like the more, my philosophy, I guess, is that the more that I genuinely care and get to know my team, the more that they're genuinely going to care and perform the way that they do for my own company, right? Like it kind of goes both ways. And I think too, just keeping in mind that like it's all a domino effect of that at the end of the day. Like, we have,
Mm-hmm.
for example, we have our daily non-negotiables. None of those have anything to do with professional work, but it's like, what are three things that you need to do so that you can show up at your 100% just for yourself, even, right? Like, so I think it's really like the principle of taking care of you is a domino effect into how they're going to show up in their professional work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just like also just getting to know them on a more personal level has allowed for like a lot of those walls to come down so that it can allow all of us to understand how we work, how we communicate, how we like to receive, how we like to give, how we like to
Mm-hmm.
perform and all that stuff. And so because at the end of the day, like we are humans, even though we're performing a professional service, we are humans at the end of the day. So you kind of need to like get to know who that person is under all those skill sets in
Right.
order for those skill sets to really shine. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've gone into. And having a team is like the more I pour into them personally, it'll equal out to professionally as well. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we've done a really good job of doing both. Um, but I think I've also set those boundaries that like when it's me coming in as CEO Gabs versus friend Gabs, like people know, and I think
Mm-hmm.
because we've built that kind of close relationship, it's like very respected in that way whenever it is like one mode or the other.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's,
Hmm.
again, like I mentioned, like such an important balance to strike. And I think the last question I had in regards to team in general, I heard you and I obviously have both gotten the opportunity to like listen to George Bryant speak, right? And he was
Hmm.
talking a lot about how scaling with your team isn't done by tasks, it's done by
Yeah.
outcomes. And I think that
Hmm.
that's something you do a really good job at with your team, is really enabling
Hmm.
like their unique style and way of doing things to come through. And you talked a little bit about letting go of control. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, like, kind of how you did that mindset work in those mental gymnastics to be able to let go of like the how and the process to really let people shine and how they get stuff done.
I think going back to just understanding that everyone operates differently, like it's not just me operating the company anymore. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to just work for me. It doesn't even have to work for me at all sometimes because I just don't do it anymore. Right. So it's like, I think understanding that like this needs to work for the company and the client, but also the person who is managing it. So be
Mm-hmm.
open to that conversation of what does work best for this specific person and what doesn't. And I think too, like we're constantly auditing and changing the way we do things as well, because
Mm-hmm.
dynamics will change all the time, whether that's the relationship with the client, whether that's the way that the team member wants to operate, whether that's the systems that we use in general. Like there's just so many things. And so I think always having just a open mind that things can change, but also just understanding the why. That's something that we always preach about is like understanding the why, and that will help you navigate. Do you go left? Do you go right? Like what changes are needed to be made? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that for me, the more I understand why people are suggesting things or why people are doing things a certain way, allows me then to be open to like, okay, let's change it then. Or if you don't explain it to me, then yeah, I'm naturally wanting to be like, no, it's this way only. So I think it's very much something that you have to always encourage your team to do is like just ask them why they're saying such things or suggesting such things, or same with clients, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just have the understanding first before you jump to conclusions of a yes or no.
Yeah, I love that. Okay,
Mhm.
last like main question for you. If someone is considering hiring their own team, whether that be in-house, outsourcing, any of those things, what is your advice for how to go about that process?
I think skill sets aren't as important as we all think they are. I think it's definitely going to come down to the individual in their mission and their values as well as an individual, and if that's going to align with your own company, because that, again, like I was saying earlier, is naturally going to bleed into how they perform at your
Hmm.
company. Skills are very much something that everyone can learn, everyone can be taught. Obviously there's certain parameters around that, and skill sets are important. But I think at the end of the day, too, you need to imagine like, could you sit down and have coffee with this person and talk about anything? Like, or is it only going
Hmm.
to be transactional of whatever task that they need to do? And I think that's the thing, too, is like, are you looking for team members long game or short game? And how invested do you want them to be in your company as well? I think that there's different kind of things to think about when you're hiring, depending
Hmm.
on for what, for how long, and like I said, the dynamic that you want. But I think bottom line is like you do really want to make sure that you and the individual do, get along essentially at the end of the day. Like you're going to be
Yeah.
spending all this time together. You're going to be opening the doors to your company to this person. And so I think it's a very important thing to consider when you're hiring is that this person is going to fit the culture that you essentially want, and you're going to feel excited to wake up and attend to basically, and
Hmm.
nurture as well, and invest in too. So I think that would be my biggest advice, is just make sure that they align with you and the company.
I love that.
Hmm.
Well, thank you for all of those insights. I feel like we haven't really gotten to talk a lot about like building a team. So I'd love to do
I
like
know.
even a
I know. I
part
feel
two
like
of
we need a
that.
part two. Yeah, I
Yeah, we
feel like
need
we
a
need
part
a part
two.
two because we just kind of opened a can of worms and
I
then
know.
didn't really get to unpack it
Yeah.
all. Because, like I said, honestly, team and leadership, I feel, are something not discussed a lot with entrepreneurs. I think we
Hmm.
all talk about all the other things, but I think this part that's more behind the scenes is
Yep.
so needed to be talked about, because it really does impact the way that the service is going to be delivered to your clients. And I always say this all the time, is that my agency wouldn't be where it is today without my incredible team. And so
Hmm.
that's why I think it's so important to pour so much into the team. Some will think I'm extra, some will think I'm crossing boundaries with the personal and the professional, but like it's truly just the proof in the pudding, essentially, as to what I've done works. It might
Yeah.
not be for everybody, but it works for me and it works for the team and it works for the way that we get to serve our clients. And so I just really think that CEOs in general too need to give their team a little bit more credit, to be honest. I've been
Hmm.
on both sides of being just a service provider and now, having my own team and stuff. But like,
Yeah.
I think that's a bigger one, is that like these companies wouldn't be where they are without the people behind the scenes. And I think that is like a big thing in itself to discuss, as to how you nurture team members to be with you for as long as, like I said, some of them have been with me for 3+ years. So it's like, there's obviously something there that you need to do in order to keep people motivated, keep people wanting to stay,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I think there's so much more to talk about with team, 100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. Well, tell us a little bit more about if somebody's looking to potentially hire a business management agency or just talk more about team with you, where they can find you.
They can find me at a sister agency on Instagram, our website as well. Yeah, those would be the best two places to chat with us on anything and everything.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like there's so much that a sister agency talks about and does, that it's hard to give a proper intro to that. So it's always best to just let's just chat.
Chat it out. I love that.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, stay tuned for part two. We're definitely doing one with you,
I
Gabs,
think so.
and
I think we got to put that on the books for sure.
for sure. Well, thank you for being here, and we'll see you guys in the next
Thank
episode.
you for having me.
Bye, guys.
Bye.